you and have previously received a copy of the program, right? So you can just refer to it and familiarize yourself with it. Um, and we'll be following that program pretty much the way that it is. We'll have one main presentation and a panel discussion, and there'll be opportunity for everybody here to ask questions to the panel, as well as to interact with the presenter after the presentation. Okay, so maybe to start off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mulungushi. I'm with the Institute for Social Policy in Africa. I'm an independent consultant, and I'm here today to be the Director of Programs, a facilitator and moderator of the conversation. And I'm happy to be here with all of you. At this point, maybe we can have some of the roving mics just around the room, quick round of introductions. Just tell us your name, the organization you're representing, and perhaps maybe tell us something interesting about yourself. We'll assume that there's something interesting about you, at least one thing that's interesting about you, right? Oh, okay, so one interesting thing about you is just turn your microphone. It's actually awesome. I'm not very loud. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so can we start? Anybody help me with the just start the round of introductions. You want me to tell you something interesting about myself, other than the microphone being off? No, no one's interested. Okay, cool. Can we have the mic and we start the introduction from the table in the back, and then we'll have the high table in the front here. One interesting thing about myself is I can't sing to save my life. If I could sing, I would start singing just now. Okay, so in the meantime, I'll just run through the program quickly without the microphone. Right, so we're going to have a quick round of introductions. Maybe just to mention that if you haven't registered, there's a registration desk just outside you. I think there's somebody helping with that at what happened in, but in case you haven't registered, you can just step out quickly and just register. And then we'll have a musical interview with the traditional singers outside. Called the Gender Traditional Dance Group. They'll come in and entertainment. There's a bit of excitement in the room today, the Friday. And then we'll have a presentation by consultants. This is presenting on the nexus between political finance, transparency, and financial barriers faced by women politicians. She juxtaposes that with the lack of political finance transparency. And then we'll have another discussion, keynote speech by the guest of honor, and then we'll have a definition statement, the closing remarks, and then we'll end the program. We'll end the program with lunch, but only those that participate in the meeting will be entitled to lunch. Huh? Okay, so we're ready to start the round of introductions. Please go ahead. We'll start from the table in the back. Your name, your organization, and something interesting about yourself. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lisa. I want to present just something about working out space.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Princess Dan. I can be student. Something interesting about me.
That's interesting enough.
My name is from Transparency International Zambia. Something interesting about me is that I have no sister, but I have a daughter.
Lucky.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chimuka Nachilinga. I'm from TIZ as well. Something interesting about me is my name. Those that are Tongas, they know what Chimuka means, meaning that I was born a bit late, past the expected date of being born. So I was given that name, Chimuka.
Okay. I didn't know that. So just put the mic closer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Good morning, everyone. My name is Banga from Daily Liberation. One interesting thing about me, I love music.
And you're a rebel for what I see.
Because
It's
we're
my
not
next
table
table
right
right
now.
now.
And then you decide to take the mic. All right,
I
let's
just
finish that
people
second.
not.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gift Nyambe from TIZ. What's interesting about me is that many people think gift is for assigned to males, but in this case, gift is for both genders. Thank you.
It's like them days. Every day.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Suku from TIZ. And something interesting about me is that I'm actually a good swimmer.
Ah, okay.
Interesting. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zanji Sinkara from TIZ. I'm the communications officer. Something interesting about me is I'm very athletic. I play tennis, and I love sports generally.
Nice.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jomi Udaktam from National Center of Zambia. I like that fish. Good morning. My name is Abano. So, from National Center of Zambia. The interesting part about me is my name, Kalu. So, I do tradition of Shibuya to myself. When the members come to try and apply video on me, I become Tumbuka, I'm Kalua. When the Tumbukas come, I'm Bemba. So I avoid Shibuya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie Kauma from Sunday 6.5. Something interesting about me, I'll say I find cooking very relaxing and very relaxing, but you never find me in the kitchen. But something that relaxes me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mariah Mwali. Something interesting about me is I like doing recipes.
Oh,
Yes,
you're sitting next to the right person.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen Bondono, and one interesting thing about me is that I am actually very interested in aviation. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Carroll from Engineering Institute. And one interesting thing about me is that I love
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve from
That's a typical.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Kangwata Motujuka. I handle HR matters at the Alliance for Accountability Advocates Zambia. And I also am a guidance counselor. What I always find so interesting is every time I ask one of the employees, if they have a minute to spend in my office, they all get worked up about it.
Because discomfort.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Joe from the Center of Leaders in Africa. One interesting thing about me, I hate doing dishes. Even my mother can force me to do dishes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lida Sechiwa. I'm from Chapter 1 Foundation. One interesting thing about me is that I'm a tea lover. Tea over tea.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mulungushi from I do not care what I say about what interests me about, but I feel just say I also morning, everyone. My name is Daniel from Transparency International Zambia. One interesting thing about me, I don't know I'm interesting. Morning, everyone. My name is Jesse Bonifacisi. I really have interesting things about me, but basically I like breaking things in personal time. Good morning. My name is Patrick Ware from Transparency International Zambia. What is interesting about me? I love music and I am a guitarist.
Oh, nice.
Good morning. From TIZ and the rest of Zambia. Because really,
Okay, we come over to the high table.
What interesting thing about me that I look my grandma has always been working. My dad is there where I am. And one interesting thing about me is I was terrible at sports, but an excellent swimmer. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Munkoyo Mulunda. So if I might be sitting the Munkoyo, Munkoyo from Kalomo. So if my phone fall down at you, also, I love cooking. It really gives me the artistic, nature. I use irony. Yeah. Morning, everyone. My name is Marcus Jones Kasula. I'm a board member of TIZ. I also work for Unify Head of HR. Something interesting about me is I'm very creative and I love writing. So I can just look at something and the story just comes into my mind and I'll be able to write something about it. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cecilia from Lusaka. I'm the chapter president for Transparency International and the board chairperson. One interesting thing about me is that when I was growing up, all the way to the University of Zambia, I was the person who was representing my school in 100 and 200 So that's what I say.
Oh, wow. All right. Thank you very much. Nice to get to know each one of you a little bit better. I was thinking that Martha was going to say one interesting thing about her is that we grew up in the same neighborhood. Her father was my head teacher in primary school. Can I just ask that those that are sitting further away closer to the door, can you please move closer so that we're closer to each other? And then we can see that you come late. But now when you're sitting there, we think you came late. Do you mind just moving a little closer so we can have a more intimate conversation? Table number 5. The table over there. Please feel free to move closer and interact with others. I saw that the GIZ people want to separate also. Like, this is an opportunity to meet other people on the table. There's a bit of space on the other table, so just filter into the other tables. Okay? With that, we'll move swiftly along. There's a lot of space in the front over here. Right. Okay, with that, we'll move swiftly along into the opening remarks that will be provided by the head of programs for TIZ, who's Mr. Raymond Tale, or Tale Raymond as he calls himself. Please give a hand to Mr. Raymond as he opens it up for us.
Interesting thing about me, I forgot my speech. The chapter president is Transparency International Zambia. Representatives from cooperative partners. Political party representatives. Hear anyone introduce themselves as coming from political parties. Ministry of Justice representatives. The Anti-Corruption Commission representatives. Election Commission of Zambia representatives. Representatives from civil society organizations. And maybe let me take this opportunity to recognize TIZ board members and members present. I greet you all and welcome you to this event. This event is organized under the Clean Money in Elections project implemented by Transparency International Zambia, focusing on political party financing and campaign financing, basically to advocate for regulation around political party and campaign financing. And today we want to commemorate women and celebrate their achievements in social, political, and cultural fields. In 1975, the United Nations recognized International Women's Day, and from 1996, International Women's Day became a theme to celebrate women in society. Ladies and gentlemen, the overall state of women representation in politics in Zambia is concerning, with the country failing to meet continental and international benchmarks laid out in the conventions on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the Rights of Women in Africa and the South Africa Development Community Protocol on Gender and Development. Although women take up 50% of Zambia's population as well as the majority of voters, they remain systematically underrepresented in politics. The SADC Protocol on Gender in Development provides for the empowerment of women to eliminate discrimination in order to achieve gender equality and equity through electoral or appointment processes to achieve 50 to 50 parity or the quota for women in decision-making positions. However, Zambia has not achieved this. For instance, while women constitute almost 51% of Zambia's population, there are only about 15.4% of women representation in parliament, while the percentage is lower at local government level, and this is due to inhibiting environment for women to participate in elections. This implies that the participation of women in decision-making positions remains very low. The low levels of participation of women in parliament can be attributed to lower chances of women being adopted as candidates by their political parties because they are not seen as winning candidates. Discrimination on the basis of gender, failure to meet education qualifications, gender-based violence, and incidents of hate speech against women candidates, among others, drive this unfavorable situation. Further, only 7.9% of elected positions are currently held by women. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now turn to the commemoration of women in politics. Overall, the obstacles to women's representation in Zambia can be divided into three categories: structural barriers, legislative and policy challenges, and barriers related to electoral procedures and electoral processes in Zambia. Zambia's patriarchal society represents a major structural barrier, traditionally assigned more powers to males than females and resources to men than women. The resulting inequalities affect women's access to education, job opportunities, and career progression. Further, this directly impacts the skills and resources needed for political mobilization, especially in a country where politics are heavily monetized. Patriarchal norms also lead to women voters to discriminate against women candidates in elections. In general, female candidates often face ridicule and insults. This, therefore, discourages women to participate in politics. A second set of challenges stems from weaknesses in the legal and policy framework, as well as the poor implementation of existing laws. Although some of the main political parties are developing gender equality plans, women's exclusion has continued as the plans are yet to be adopted and implemented by respective political parties. For example, Zambian parties have failed to implement mandatory quotas for women. The two main political parties, I don't know if the Patriotic Front is still one of the main political parties anyway. The two main political parties, Patriotic Front and UPND, have both announced a goal of ensuring 40% female representation in key internal structures, but have failed to realize this goal in practice. Only one woman contested the presidential elections in 2021 under the New Heritage Party. securing 0.17% of the votes and 7th of the 16 candidates that contested. Thirdly, electoral procedures, the police and the department responsible for issuing national identity and voter cards are also disadvantaging women. For instance, the police sometimes fail to curtail election-related violence, especially violence committed by ruling party cadres. This creates a fearful environment for women voters before, during, and after elections. Long distances to polling stations, poor elections infrastructure, the rushed distribution of national identity cards, and lack of civic education further impede women's ability to vote on election day. It is clear from Transparency International research, which was conducted around money and politics in Zambia, and other organizations that have conducted similar studies, that among the key barriers for female political participation include structure of the current legal framework, a political culture with patriarchal values, embedded with patriarchal values and norms that are unsupportive to female candidates, and lack of personal wealth or access to resources to fund campaigns by women. Further, women in politics are often forced to endure discrimination and entrenched stereotypes, as well as working environment and schedules that do not consider caregiving responsibilities that women disproportionately undertake. They also, for more likely than men, experience multiple forms of harassment and threats, both online and in person on campaign trails. Further, women face greater challenges than men in securing the resources needed to obtain a party nomination, and also to campaign for political office. Inadequate flexibility and support, financial and otherwise, from political parties hinder and sometimes prevent them from standing as candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end by stating that this event seeks to facilitate conversations on the need to reverse this undesirable underrepresentation of women at different levels of decision making, coupled with various challenges that women face to run for office in Zambia. Let me also encourage you to actively participate and engage in these conversations as part of contribution towards us trying to address this issue and reverse the underrepresentation of women in Zambia, and particularly women representation and participation in politics. May I end by wishing you all the best in this conversation, and thank you. Let's enjoy this conversation.
It's fine, we're not dressed now. It's just me. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Raymond. A hand for him. I only heard the hand come on this side. I think he's raised a number of pertinent issues, speaking to the context in which women participate in politics in Zambia, also presenting some compounding statistical realities of women's representation in politics as well as in decision making, and then just looking at some of the barriers that keep women out of active participation in politics. So that was a very good way to sort of lay the ground for the conversation that will happen for the rest of this meeting. I see two people have come in and are sitting on the latecomers table. One of them is my former lecturer. So maybe I'll ask the people with the mic to just give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell something interesting about themselves as well. At least we'll get to know you, but you won't know the rest of us because that's what happens when you come late. I know if I was in my lecturer's class, he would have probably even closed the door for me not to go in. So I'm going to continue on this path until he's given the mic to introduce himself. And right after that, we're going to have the musical interlude. So it's like musical poetry, I think that will happen after that. I see the mics are not going to the table yet, so maybe they'll introduce themselves after the musical interlude. I see our cultural group is ready for us. So I'll hand the floor over to them. Please put your hands together for Insembe Traditional Dance Group.
Unipaisia sister wangu. Mujere ndama zake zisira huko. Ndale za masiku wano ukangala pampando.
Transparency International Zambia.
expressão.
And what's now the direct agenda. Microphone. Did anyone else come in after the introduction already done?
From the podium. I'm waiting for the presentation to become.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that didn't introduce themselves? Okay, all right. A hand again for Mrs. Julius.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Am I audible? Now I don't know whether I have to use this mic or. This is more user friendly. Good morning. Thank you so much. I hope somebody will be moving the slides. So today my presentation is to connect lack of political finance and transparency and the financial barriers that women face in politics. You can move to the next slide. So the objective of this presentation is to, this is the outline of the presentation. I will introduce the objective of the presentation. Then I will try to talk about political finance transparency and how lack of finance regulations affects women's participation in politics. Then I'll have some few recommendations. So the objective of this presentation is just to bring out the connection between political finance transparency and the financial barriers that are faced by women politicians. You can move to the next slide. So the introduction to political finance transparency is that it entails political parties being transparent on their source of funding for general political activities and key programs like elections. So we all understand that finances are quite important for the functionality of the political parties. But however, we have also seen that finances create quite an unleveled playing field amongst political parties or amongst electoral candidates. So I have been advantaged to participate in different elections from 2011, 2016, and 2021. So 2011, we saw MMD I think that time MMD was ruling party. We saw how much finances MMD had during the 2011 elections, and we saw so much money being poured in those elections, such that there was campaign regalia everywhere. I think even now, if you go to rural provinces, especially Eastern Province, you still see the MMD regalia. In 2016, 2021, um, PS was a ruling party, and we saw so much money also, and regalia being poured within communities. Actually, these days, if you go to any village or any community, you will find people still wearing on those regalias. So we can see the unlevel field, playing field amongst the political parties. And research globally by International Idea and Transparency International cite the lack of transparency around political finance as one of the key recipes for politics, one of the key recipes of corruption in politics. And currently in Zambia, I would like to say that we do not have a law compelling political parties to disclose their source of funding, and also at the same time, we do not have a law uh, regulating how much money can be used by political parties in an election. I think the last attempt that was made to legislate around political finance was in 2017 when the political party bill was taken to parliament. But of course, we saw that the law was rejected, and it was one of those times when both the opposition and also the ruling party political party MPs decided to reject the law. We can move to the next slide. So globally, political parties are compelled to disclose their source of funding in some of the countries. And we have seen this working very well in those countries, because what the candidates are preoccupied about is just campaigning. So according to international idea, political finance transparency is quite key because of the following reasons. The first one is that it prevents an exaggeration in election spending by political parties. I think we all know of an adage where we saw, I want to name the political party, but we saw some regalia being dressed or even animals. So that was an exaggeration. And also the other thing is that it levels the political playing field amongst political parties and the candidates. And also it keeps illicit and criminal money out of politics and elections. If there is no regulation in political finance, it's very easy for criminals to launder their money through political parties. Lastly, it promotes the political party participation of women and other marginalized groups, like persons with disabilities and the youth in the elections. We can move to the next slide. So we have already established why it's important to regulate political funding. So I'm coming in now to bring the nexus between the lack of finance regulation and also the women's participation in politics. So it is a proven fact that other marginalized groups, women and other marginalized groups face a lot of hindrances. And some of these hindrances were introduced in the welcoming remarks by the head of programs, which are financial, structural, legal, cultural, social, economic, and psychological. So today we are focusing on the finance part, and it's one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to participation in elections and politics in general. I think this is because it's very expensive to run an election campaign. And earlier on, it was already alluded to that you have to spend a lot of money during campaign from the adoption stage up to the time when you are elected. And a lot is required for an election, and a lot of spending is done. We can go to the next slide. So some of the costs that are incurred on during elections include paying party nomination fees, which happen at different stages. And by the way, when you pay those amounts of money, it is not guaranteed that you actually be adopted. So you start paying from the ward level. There's a ward committee that sits. You pay at district level. You pay at provincial level, and then up to the national level. The argument by political parties that this is how they also raise their funding for the party, but also it's not guaranteed that you win the nominations and the adoptions by the end of the day. And we heard about a recent study that was done by TIZ that for a candidate to successfully win an election, they had to spend about 3.9 million kwacha, and very few marginalized women and also persons with disabilities are able to afford such kind of monies. And because of these challenges, the current representation of women in decision-making positions is very low. I know that the area speaker spoke about 15% in parliament. The 15% includes the speaker herself, the deputy speaker, and the other people at National Assembly. But I'll focus on the MPs themselves. The actual number is 15%. And for persons with disabilities, it's less than 3%. And the other, of the youths, it's also less than 1%. We can move to the next slide. And also, this creates a ripple effect when it comes to the nomination of women in decision-making positions. Because of the fact that we have few women being elected, we have few youths being elected, and we also have few persons with disabilities being elected. We find that we also have a limited number of people to hold positions like cabinet. So like right now, we only have 5 women out of 28. So it is actually a fact that women and other marginalized groups have less access to resources that are needed to participate in politics. And this is because of the high poverty levels amongst women. And also, apart from high poverty levels, we have very few women and also other marginalized groups in the informal sectors. We can move to the next slide. The other thing is that the reason why we need to regulate finances, when it comes to other benefits like the political party materials, we see that women are not prioritized. When party materials are being distributed, very few women are given those materials. So we need to have we need to regulate the political party finance so that all the people can have access to the materials. Also, there are other issues when it comes to party finances. When for example, in nomination fees were introduced by ECZ, we saw a large number of women dropping out, and this was even after the fees were reduced. You can go to the next slide. So the major recommendation is that we need to introduce a law that will regulate political party finance, for example, the source of funding and also the ceiling that can be used during an election. It is not a secret that lack of regulation of political finance has led to the rise of corruption in politics. And also, apart from that, in a country where we have very few numbers of women in parliament and also in local government, we need to, and we also do not have quotas. We need to ensure that the number of, we need to ensure that the money is being regulated. So regulating political finance is key, and this has actually been done very successfully in countries like Israel, where there's a limit to how much contributions can be used and how much money can be used. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do we have any questions about the question, observation, or comments in response to this presentation? Any reactions? Yes, pretty clear. Okay. At this point, we'll go for a quick break, health break, grab some tea, and then we'll come back in 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. And then we'll go straight into panel discussion with three distinguished delegates. All right, so we can have a little discussion, have some tea outside, outside, but take 10 to 20 minutes. Max. Enjoy. 14 minutes left. No one's not getting up. Should we continue? All right, enjoy your tea. She said that's interesting about yourself. It's very true. I was shocked when I heard. I didn't recognize you until I heard your voice. Really? Yes. I told you. Really? So it's just like I'll be. The moderator. Oh, no, she's a moderator. I know. YouTube, you know. Yeah. Oh, you look nice as usual. The shop. Oh, yeah. Oh, for goodness sake.
I hope you enjoyed the short break and had opportunity to stretch a little. So we'll go straight into the panel discussion now. So as I mentioned, our panel discussion is extending on the presentation that was shared earlier by Ms. Chiuka, still considering the nexus between political finance transparency and financial barriers faced by women politicians. So I'll invite the distinguished panelists to come and join me up front here. The panel will be formatted in a way that I ask questions that they respond to. So join me in welcoming the panel, Ms. Anne Alagara from NGOCC. For her, please. The hands in here, the tea break. That's a bit better. Okay, let's see, we'll try again and see how this works. Let's also welcome Mr. Peter Wanangombe from CCMG. A hand for him, please. Wasn't enough sugar in the tea. And then lastly, returning to the podium, this is Julia Chimuta to join the panel. That's it, we are comfortable.
Give it to.
Now go closer. I guess we can have a second microphone to show. Make it easier. Is it on or it's on? You all have this microphone. The chapter, the president, Martha, what number? She's sitting next to me. Oh, okay. All right. I think so. That's it. You have this right? Okay. All right. If we don't have, we have to get to microphones for the speakers, for the streaming. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we can just start by quickly just giving an introduction of ourselves, our organization, and our role in the discussion that we're having this morning. I'll invite Anne perhaps to start. That's us off. Anne Anamela. Start us off and just introduce yourself, your organization, and the role that you play in issues around governance and women's representation in politics.
Thank you very much. Is the mic working? Hello? Yeah. Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. It was very interesting earlier on to get to hear at least one thing about each one of you that we don't know. Really, really interesting. I come from the Non-Governmental Gender Organizations Coordinating Council, in short, NGOCC. NGOCC is a network umbrella organization that focuses on gender equity and equality, really looking at the empowerment of women. These days, we hear a lot of talk about leaving boys behind and, people coming to us and actually saying, why is it that you're only looking at women and girls? We're very unapologetic about that. It's because the playing field is not yet level. Women and girls need a push. We have various interventions around building the capacity of women in various ways. We have a focus on looking at issues of traditional norms, practices, and beliefs because we believe that those are the bedrock. Those are the real cause of everything that we see around gender inequities and inequalities. We also look at advocacy around legal and policy frameworks, looking at what we have, how is that working, and where the gaps are, and what else is needed. We look at the resilience of the woman in every way, looking at issues of climate change, access to finance, sexual reproductive health rights, and a number of other interventions, including education, looking at issues of ensuring that we address early childhood marriage, we address early teenage pregnancy. So we look holistically at issues that affect women and girls. And in resilience, we also look at the need to ensure that women are in leadership, all types of leadership, including political leadership, that their participation in politics must be wholesome. It shouldn't only be around voting for men, campaigning for men, and at times, unfortunately, dancing, at airports. We look at holistic participation, ensuring that women themselves are participating as leaders, hence getting into politically elected office. So in the last year or so, we have concentrated on looking at what the gaps are in the legal frameworks, and we've come to a firm conclusion that where we are as Zambia, we need affirmative action.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. My name is Judith Chikuta. I'm a gender human rights consultant. The other issue that connects me to governance issues and women politics is spent over 15 years working in the area of elections, governance, and women in politics. I've been privileged to participate, I think, in the last 4 elections, and seeing the progressive issues around the elections and governance. My immediate past position is working for international rugby for that I was in Sweden. The job that I was doing there was democracy and elections, and also previously I went to for Southern Africa legal assistance network. I know also women's issues. So I've been working around those areas of
Thank you.
So I work with research name suggests monitoring organization, specifically women's elections and electoral processes. Now, I find myself here discussing this issue because I think elections are political power, and over the last few years, there's been a lot of commercialization of politics and the impact of money in politics is great. I think those that still are in doubt, we can just pay attention to what's happening in the US, who is calling the shots, who is doing what, and what they do during the campaign. So that's just one thing that we pay attention to. Coming back to what we do as CMPs, during our monitoring interventions, we pay attention to how accessible the electoral process for women. And sometimes we're even tempted to do this that perhaps we could have a section in the law which proposes a punishment for violation against women. need to understand how that would work. But I think we are at that point now that really the aspects of women participation is important one, and that our legal framework to be able to reflect that. So we know that those aspects we also pay attention to violence against women, because again, we have a lot of women who are actually are the ones that fought, because when you look at the aspect of violence, I tell you, no woman wants to associate themselves with violence at whatever level. So there are those dynamics that we have to need to do, but that's what we try to really focus on. How we can see, especially as it relates to participation in women and disabilities.
Okay, so we're getting this very loud feedback. I don't know if there's something we're doing wrong. Just some help with it. But it's distracting, not just myself, but others as well. Okay, so maybe just to kick off the conversation in a way that all of us are at the same point of understanding. In very simple terms, how would, in your own way and based on your area of expertise, how would you define political finance transparency? How should you understand political finance transparency? What would this look like in the Zambia context? Who would like to start?
So, campaign finance transparency basically means having in place mechanisms that allow those that are involved in spending during campaigns to be able to account for the resources that they use, but also to be able to disclose the source. So it's not so much, it's not always about telling us how much you have. It's not about telling us how much you have, but also where you got it. Because as I said earlier, there is a great connection between the person that comes to the campaign and what outcome happens when they get elected to office. Like I said earlier, we pay attention to the issues of Zimbabwe. I mean, sorry, US. We have stories of the South Africa. So as issues of South Africa. So basically, campaign finance transparency requires that those that spend money in politics are able to disclose the sources of funding and also tell us how much they are saving for what.
Yeah.
I think the definition has been said, but what I would like to add is that it's important to ensure that political finance is regulated so that we give chance to marginalized groups like women, persons with disabilities, youth, so that they participate in the elections effectively. The fact that they not usually have resources has led to very big discriminated communities and also being let down when it comes to being appointed to political positions. And one thing that our society has not understood up to now is that we need to elect leaders that are upright, and because of the use of finances, we end up sometimes having leaders that are not upright, leaders that are corrupt, leaders that do not care about the welfare of people. So if finance is regulated, then it will mean that everyone is on the same level, and people are able to exhibit their leadership and what they if you watch that definition, but just to bring it home because of the implications of the lack of
transparency for women in politics? How does this affect them, and how does it create barriers for their participation in politics?
Thank you. What we know, whenever we engage women in politics, the one thing they say is that one of the greatest impediments to their participation is finance. And they give us examples. You know, they'll say, right now, as I'm here in Lusaka, this is a parliamentarian, sitting parliamentarian. As I'm here in Lusaka, there's a man in my area who is financing all the funerals, who is, paying for school fees. And that person, while I'm here, is literally campaigning for the whole 5 years. And I don't have that sort of money. So financing would do, especially if it's a political party financing, would be to attach some rules around ensuring that we level the playing field when it comes to the practices also that go on during political processes. There's a lot of exchange of brown envelopes. I think we all know that. And we all know that statistics show us that women are more economically disadvantaged than men. Hence, if we leave it willy-nilly and free for everybody to spend in the way that they want, at the time that they want, it disadvantages the woman that really has does not have sufficient economic resources to compete with all these men that are out there. And, we talk about financing. I just want to digress a little bit. We talk about actual financing, which is an encumbrance to women's participation. But there are other forms of corruption as well in terms of political participation, such as extortion. And sometimes extortion doesn't only go with exchange of you give me sex and I'll make sure you're on the ballot box. It also sometimes goes with you give me sex and I'll give you money for your campaign. So there are a number of ways that women are disadvantaged. And if political parties were funded and monitored in terms of the way, it's not just about where they get the money, but having some regulation on how campaigns are conducted and having authorities, maybe in the ECZ, that would ensure that there are punitive measures against those political parties that do not follow what they should do, especially even in ensuring a level playing field that would also include women, then maybe we'll get somewhere in ensuring the inclusion of women.
Yeah, thank you. And I like what you said now. So I want to bring it to you, Peter, just from a practical perspective as a monitoring group. Are you seeing, based on what Anne was saying about the exchange of life and loss, the extortion and other forms of corruption, are you seeing this translate during electoral processes? Do you see this actually translate at disadvantaged women, and in what ways?
In so many ways. I'll give you an example of something of things that we pick out about the electoral interest of all. Now, you have a situation in Kawakwa and Ketaoke where I give you money. I give you 10% to women and 50% to men. Okay? That's great. They are creating a demarcation who gets what amount, how we get one amount. So that's right. And I'm excited what the team that we do now is going to political parties and understand how primaries are conducted and so on and so forth. Political parties have been a bit unsure about it, but I think if we were strict about these things, the society's act can actually still catch up with them. And with proper enforcement, we will see that political parties will begin to apply these things. Now, women are disadvantaged in terms of, first of all, the aggregate within identities and all that. So for them to contest to get there. But also remember that you need to pay for your name to be picked up somewhere there. We still have a safety community that are getting. So you are paying that for the past. First of all, we are primary, but you also have to buy the people who are actually the woman is paying 5 times more than what a man pays. Right? They are not told that. Essentially, that's so these things are happening. And I think it's no wonder we have how many violations now. Over 28 violations. Maybe it's going to be complement this. Even at the story that and we are seeing this because of monetization of politics, and it has become so bad so that people have to pay money. And unfortunately, our legal framework is not helping. Our electoral process is not help. Our legal system does not help issues. Because if we deal with these issues only, it should now extend to the aspect of primary. So one needs to address the legal framework, need to deal with the anti-corruption legal framework, need to further reduce threshold of moving the right corruption. Because the threshold remains very high, it perpetuates this. How to protect you a lot to prove that someone can make you pay to get to that position. So until we have a situation where we are concerned about too much as being paid, for that because it's an injustice, then it's serious.
Yeah, and yes, I keep hearing and even as I was speaking earlier, you keep pointing out the issue that which is raising around the regulation, the rule of law, and aspects of that kind. How is the current regulation sort of hindering women's access to finance for their participation in politics? And how can we see that globally there's hope to increase transparency on political financing? I think for the reasons that you mentioned. So how can we change our regulation at country level to strengthen women's participation?
I'll take you back to the recent study material, which revealed that women successfully in COVID. I was recently in a meeting for women in politics, and I was actually because most of the time in politics, we're reminding women, women's movement. You don't give us money, you don't fund us. So, each organization, 3.9 billion, it's a fund. So, how many people you fund? It's just impossible. And the money that is given to people that comes from donors and so on, it's just impossible. You can't just fund. So the only way to ensure that we reduce the amount of money that is being spent, because the people have to reach to a point where people out there, electorate, understand that competition money is actually corruption. Because the electorate will say things like, this is what we have. They feel that money which is being paid to them was stolen somewhere and it's being given back. So I think if we regulate the amount of money that is being used during campaigns, during elections, the money that is being used by political parties to come to a stage where all the political candidates are at the same level. And now people start judging the candidates on who is more intelligent, who has better ideas, and who is a good leader, so on. So I think we need to go to the drawing board society to ensure that we have such roles regulated. Our attended campaigns in the Western world, in Finland, where the electorate are actually helping
women and persons with disabilities to campaign effectively. You know, demand for women here in Zambia and other African countries, you need the country in fact is starting. You can also think of the when somebody wants to join your community, you need to fix that person, you need to lodge them, you need to do everything for them. You need to, if you are going to stand in a rural story, you need to guide them from Lusaka because people are coming from different areas. Very different areas. You need to find them. You need to connect with them. So it's fighting. And the amount of money. So here, by my point, the amount of money we invest to find people yeah, I mean, that's the biggest kind of challenge, to be honest. I mean, if you need at least 3.9 million to win an election, it reduces chances for so many women and so many groups to participate effectively. Now, I'm from NGOCC's perspective. Are you doing this, like Julia said, 3.9 is an entire project on its own. In what ways are you creating platforms and space for women to be able to participate and to understand where they can access financing for their participation in politics?
This is a very tricky one because of the levels of financing required. So at the moment, there's something that we're trying, I shouldn't say piloted, because I think it's been tried before, but we are in the process of establishing a fund for women. I cannot give the details here right now, but there's this fund that would like to develop and grow as we go towards the elections. As Juliet said, we're very restricted in the type of support that we can give, not only in the amount, but also in what we can do. Most of our international cooperating partners would restrict us to areas like T-shirts, some limited campaign material. But, these ladies have to go around the whole constituency. They need fuel. We have restrictions on issues like that. So we're trying to establish this fund. The nitty-gritties are being discussed at the moment, so I don't have the full, explanation of how we're going to do it. So the reality is, even the women that we deal with, some of them, this is now, I think, almost the fourth year in the electoral cycle, are still paying back loans, from the last election. So we have some women in economic empowerment programs right on the ground, in the areas where we work. And these are trying to capitalize even on issues such as climate change. How do you turn that into an opportunity for business? And also, we're also providing entrepreneurship skills and building the confidence of women, to be able to even walk into an institution and determine what sort of financing they might need and, discuss and negotiate, but also skills to be able to stand and sell yourself, when you're standing for an election. But the issue of financing, I must say, still, we don't have the solution right now because of the large sums and the practices that we still have in this country. Until we change the way we manage our elections, this issue of financing will remain. 3.9 million for one person. I cannot say that we have the solution to that. We're trying, but not yet there.
It's quite intelligent. Maybe for you, Peter, let's come back to you. We're seeing more and more in a number of different countries experimenting with public funding mechanisms to ensure the participation of women in politics. Considering our landscape here in Zambia, where do you think we are with that, and how can we make it work for our country?
Okay, so this legislation, I think, which be useful to deal with the issue. I think we really need to have a very motivation for bringing in legislation. I've just been looking and I'm saying, okay, so if we remove money from politics, let's say the government, what is it that we're going to use them? And that's what we need to think about. What other motivation can we bring can don't deliver also on this mandate. But of course, there's a lot of regulations, certification, and all those things, and all these things require money. So then how do you manage that? And this is where I think the legislation starts. We've seen countries that are we've seen countries that use political party legislation to deal with the aspect of quotas, all those things, where you cannot just be a political party that seats candidates that are all male. So you're going to have a percentage in that to win. And I think the more that you do that, then I think it would help in saying, well, maybe that area is going to be able to organize. So it's a question of what is the legislation? If you look at value, what are the policies and how do that look like? And if we are able to then answer that, I think we move into what the closest is one legislate, and then also deal with strengthening government so that there's really no desire for one to want by the voters. There's no desire for one to buy their way to position and so on. So this is why they spend 5 to 8 years staying back. I don't care whether they're seen or not. They give each other contracts in their civil circles, and there is nothing that is going on. A lot of money is leaving the country. That's these issues about them. And this is the reality of it. So we really think towards legislating and not just legislating and just having very good laws, but those that because we have very, very big influence on the policy side that even the custodian of the laws and this is mostly will be seen pushing what they wouldn't match and and it's only to them that if that is this organization goes on this is what we're going to do next. And see what just speaking on what in those positions.
Okay, thank you. Maybe to Juliet and based on what you just mentioning about the motivation. I am recalling what the example showed us earlier on, showing why the gets into politics. And I love the example of when a child is sick, who's got responsibility for a child? When a child has to go to school, who's thinking about them? What are the actual implications? By creating these financial barriers that we've created that are keeping them out of politics, what are the actual, in reality, what does this translate to in terms of the implications for a country on a broader scale? What the medium thinks about?
Yeah, so one of the immediate things that I can think about the other day I was in a meeting which was discussing the fact that we've been fluctuating as a country for women living in this generation. So I'll use parliament, for example. We've been fluctuating between 11% and 17%. I think in the last 4 elections. So the highest women was in 2016. When you were about 17. But so now the conclusion is that we need to have sort of quotas for marginalized students. And for me, I discussed between 11 and 17%. For persons with disabilities and youth, it's very large. I think right now, last year, I was doing something for the National Assembly, and last year, for the youth, because they were elected in 2021, and now they have grown. So the numbers have actually gone down. I think now they are around 2%.
And for persons with disabilities, after Honorable Chilanga went out, I think the numbers are further reduced. It's also between 2 and 3%. So the implication is that issues that concern persons with disabilities, issues that concern women, issues that concern youth are not effectively discussed at the decision-making table. Of course, they are discussed, but not effectively discussed. So I think it's important that the leadership that we have in place should mirror the society that we have. So in society, we have persons with disabilities, we have women, and we have men. And we are saying that we are country. I like very much the simple definition from democracy, rule by people, for the people, and so on. It's not rule by men for men, because the men are majority. So now that the first past the post an ecosystem country, and we've been doing it for many years, we need people. How else can we get women, persons with disabilities, and youth in the decision-making table? If we are failing to use current laws, what else can we do? So taking away money from elections campaigns is one of them. Of course, we also need more other things, like for example, as I said, coming up with quotas to have a quick fix solution to ensure that the decisions are being discussed. We know where you see nice roads, you see electricity, and what does that mean? It means that the decisions are being made by a particular kind of people, and those are men. And when you ask people in that area, a nice with electricity, they'll tell you like, what we need is a clinic. We have to train and because women are the ones such a brand of lack of social economic issues, and they are not in the high decision making table. The men have a certain way of women have a certain way of bring it to a house table. When money comes immediately in the home, but if you think of this and that, my husband is, oh, this is not doing that. It's extreme, a very high extreme. The men for electricity, roads, so on, the women, and it's not the consequences for females and the males. I think that's what I used to do when I was working in minorities. When you go to from males, the priorities are different. So please have all of them on decision table in equal numbers so that the discussions and the decisions are equal. Right now, it's very based on disability. Almost representation is below 5%. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more with what Juliet has just said. What is missing when not all strata of society is represented, for example, us women, is our lived experiences. We have our own lived experiences, and there are differentiated needs between men and women. And who can articulate those lived experiences better than those that have actually lived it? I'll give you an example to illustrate even what Juliet has just said. I once managed a program called the Promotion of Community Managed Services. And what would happen is that we would bring communities together to try and identify what their priorities were for development. A little bit like what CDF is doing now. And we had one area in Southern Province where they decided, the men and women decided and agreed that they all needed water. That's true. I mean, it was good, they needed water. But now the issue was, where should the water point be? Where should the borehole be? And the men all had this idea about where the borehole should be. The men wanted the borehole near the chief's residence. The women wanted the borehole in a different place. And when we interrogated further, these were the reasons. For the men, it didn't really matter the location, but it would be good for it to be near the chiefs. And that was the only reason. For the women, the fields were maybe, as an example, in the east. So what they wanted to do was, after working in the fields, the water point should be somewhere close or somewhere on their way home, so that they collect their water and get home, rather than walk past the village and to the chief's place, come back with the water. So this is why we need to be at the table, why we need to be in decision making and influential positions. We have lived experiences that we must communicate.
Thank you very much. Well, I think the discussion that the panelists have shared with us, I think some of the issues that we are around the importance of legislation and regulation at country level, and what that can do for changing the landscape of political interaction in the country, and reduce the deterrent of costs that keeps women out of politics. Also looking at this legislation not just being in existence, but actually being enforceable. I think is important. And then also I like to focus on the non-monetary aspects that keep women out of politics. All this is that keeping women that work together to keep women out of politics are important to take into consideration. And also the implications of the fluctuation in numbers. So we're not seeing a consistent and steady rise in representation in parliament to decision-making positions, but we're seeing a constant fluctuation over time. And even with that, the numbers are still very low. And this is what, without even forgetting other vulnerable groups such as persons with disabilities, as well as youth. Right? And then also they brought up issues of not effectively discussing things that are really the lived experiences of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. So their realities are different, and so are their needs and priorities. And we're seeing this translate in the kind of programs that are being implemented. And then also just the importance of ensuring that we continue to be practical in terms of introducing these responses that are bringing in, because if women's voice is missing from the conversation, we're going to implement solutions for them, but they won't really be the right solutions for them. So with that, allow me to quickly just open the floor to the audience, just for them to ask any questions or clarification from the panel. If there's anyone who would like to interject at this point to ask a question, to the panelists, or to make a comment and observation, please feel free at this point. You can raise your hand and the mic will get to you. I assume. Anyone? Okay, we've got a hand on this table here. We've got a hand on the other table there. Okay, we've got two questions. We'll take more questions and then we'll pass it on back to the.
My name is Thomas Mwale from SunFM TV. My question is heading to NGOCC, and obviously, Madam Juliet, you can come in also with your expert analysis. Within this discussion, one important thing that has been highlighted, especially from Madam Juliet a few minutes ago, you were highlighting just the statistics of how as a country we've reduced in terms of representation of women in parliament. Of course, we have not been consistent, and we have not seen a steady rise of having many women within parliament. I would want to understand whether we are attributing the low numbers of women in parliament as a result of the lack of financing within the campaigns, or probably there isn't much supporting women representation. What exactly are we pointing to within this concern that we are raising? Is it the lack of finance that is leading to us as the country not having quite a number of women in parliament, or is this probably the way the landscape is, the political landscape is in Zambia, not really favoring women? I want to get clarity on that line. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a question?
Yeah, my name is Roger. I just want to ask a question. when you follow the historical trends, where do you trace this practice from? What were the precipitating factors which brought about it? Okay. I think maybe at one point we might have a very good past, but something somewhere when that happened, and what is it that triggered it? Again, do we have success stories within the region, or maybe on the continent without crossing over to other countries far away, that we just on our continent where things are happening very well? What is that they have done different from us, which has given them clean campaigns? I'll point to what by a nutshell. It comes in a different forms. Well, and it has already started. Okay. And I think in politics now in our country, it's a survival of the richest. For getting political, survival of the richest. You might have the brain, you can talk, but if you have no pocket, you are expected. It's so rampant and actually very, very complicated. You don't know why someone is helping you. Okay. And you know, I think starting this year, you will see an increase in the frequency of visitations to the constituencies. So I think those are my concerns. You can have very good legislation, but implementation is another. You know, I accept the quota system. If you want to increase the numbers of women in parliament, the quota system is one way where you're very sure if it's 10% or 40%, they will be there. And then 60% men and women will compete together. You are very sure that at least, regardless of what happens to the 70 or 60%, this 30 or 40% women have. And it has worked well in other countries where they have implemented it. So, the legislation without the quota system, we will still remain on where we are. Oh, yes, and put this legislation to control vote bank, but it will come in different and complicated ways as it is. I think those are my concerns, the historical perspectives, where do we have a good past, what it triggered needs, do we have success stories or what we're talking about within the region or just on the continent?
Thank you. There's one more question here. You can also introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Caroline Katotwe. And my question to whoever would want to pick it up is this. I know when it comes to political parties, they have their own way of conducting adoptions. And I think it is at that level of adoption that we are missing it in terms of who gets adopted. Normally, political parties will look to those that have finances to get adopted. And I think women are left behind. There is an issue where I was privileged to be part of a panel where we were discussing political party financing. And my position is this. Do you think if that bill was to be enacted into law, I know the Constitution has a provision for it in terms of political party financing, and it's something that is being practiced in Malawi, for example, where certain political parties are being financed through the government, through public funds. And the rationale behind this is with that, it creates some sort of equalization. There's equity. But also, my question to you, or just for you to engage me in this, is that do you think with such a law in place, political party financing, of course, a clause that would help this situation is perhaps each political party that receives financing should have a certain percentage being attributed to women and marginalized groups to qualify to receive the funding. Do you think this could be a game changer? And if it is, what are some of the efforts that you think you can make or are making? Thank you.
Thank you. I have a number of questions and comments there. Can I invite you to just respond to them? So we've got one on let's just finances actually moving out of politics. Who would like to take that? Juliet?
The last question?
No, the first one, the very first one. Please go ahead. So you can answer any of the questions.
So for the first question, Mr. Mwadi, on the country not being consistent in terms of the numbers and as situated.
I think in the presentation, one of the things that I mentioned was like finance. We also have other issues that are affecting us having low numbers like social issues, economic issues, political issues, the cultural context, patriarchal system for culture, the fact that in this country we are patriarchal and we really think that leadership is vested in men. I think that's one of the things. So finance is just one of them, and I think the discussion has dominated finance because of the fact that there is a discussion on finance. Otherwise, it's a multifaceted situation where you have a lot of issues affecting women, persons with disabilities, and also the youth not getting included. That's why, as a region, as a country now, I'm getting to the next question. As a region, as a country, we came up Zambia is one of the countries that have enacted some of the progressive laws on gender equality, and Zambia has signed and ratified almost every protocol that is there concerning gender equality, on disability, and so on and so on. But we cannot implement them. Some of them we are really trying to escape them. Like, for example, they say our gender equity and equality law has borrowed from the UN saying, but you find that we are not implementing what we actually put there. So the question was is it historical? No, I think this is our 61st year of independence. We have, I think at the beginning, before, in the first month, we had about 7-10%. And then we increased the highest we've gone is about 17%. So at this level, it's actually important to depend on the first party cost as a way of making because some people. So we need to come up with measures that will ensure that we are having women that are the right groups in parliament.
Okay, to add on to that, one of the issues that is also keeping women away from public office is cyberbullying. This has become so rampant in the last few years, as we all know. And historically, women are judged differently. A man will say something and it will, why is he saying this? He will argue from a different perspective. A woman says something, it will go right down to the lipstick on her lips. It will go down to who she's slept with. 10 years ago, when the man was sleeping in university, sorry, in the last 1 year. So cyberbullying, most of the women to say, sometimes you try to balance the, it's like cost-benefit analysis, and then you decide, no, 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 maybe I might as well stay away. So that's a great, very big thing, and we hope that the cyber crimes and cyber security bills will come into effect, and of course, with proper provisions. The historical issues around financing elections. I think the time we had the one-party system, we saw less of it. So it may be that the more competitive an electoral system becomes, the more likely it is that we will have issues of very, very expensive financing and issues of underhand methods, to fund campaigns. Really, I think I've lived long enough to have lived through the multi-party system, and I was involved in some way in the background in politics. It wasn't the way it is now. The political party bill, I think, is critical. When we talk about legislation, that is one that is critical. Right now, it is sitting somewhere. We have a bill sitting somewhere. And if that bill could speak to financing of political parties and ensure, compel political parties to nominate, for example, 50-50, and also strengthen the Electoral Commission, to have the authority to actually reject nominations that did not fit the bill, that might help. But the political parties bill is very critical. We won't say it will be the panacea for everything, but definitely that would help.
Would you like to respond to the issue of any success stories, if you can? Examples?
Yes. In terms of success stories, well, I think many African countries are still struggling to find their feet around the issue of campaign financing and regulation. For a simple reason, to see when you shoot a ceiling, there are people that can beat that ceiling and still get more money. Somebody told us that people that do corruption are very intelligent, even more intelligent than lawyers can represent them. So we are oftentimes now going to play catch up. So it's really a sticky place, but I think some form of legislation will be able to help. Malawi has established a registrar of political parties, and we'll see how that works in the coming general election. I know in Kenya, I'm speaking about adoption and the political parties bill as far as it relates, or political party legislation, as far as it relates to enhancing democratic practices within political parties. So in Kenya, before you even find a nomination, it has to be cleared by the registrar of political parties to ensure that you meet those things that mentioned. So whether you have the quite requisite number of women on the lists, whether you have representation for young people, whether you have representation for disabilities. And I think for me that's always been a big fan of having a political party legislation, so that political parties for once can be treated as institutions, because right now they are treated as clubs, and that's why people can afford to go around and do what they want to do tomorrow. They can't even account for anything, they are not accountable at all. But we need to institutionalize them so much so that we take things of government very seriously, because they become part of the government structure, right? Have worked with political parties to do gender policies. They always end up something like you go back to zero. You move, you go back to zero. None of them have moved a step and go into their constitutions. So that is serious. So it's how unserious institutions are. What happened before? When I think this issue of money starts just after Kaunda gets competition. So now we need to keep the slogan on the side. How to do this? Money has to speak. This is when people start fighting, sponsor violence, because of the to communicate this. You have people that have done campaigns in this country. What it's creating a problem space. And I want to that we need to change our ecosystem. The first part of the process is on when it's only getting worse. So we need to think about an electric system that will prevent the use of money, one that will not one that will give people the feel that they actually win an election very big money. And also, there are lots of money people that are actually good at that can be very political advisors in some of these countries. But because in civil society, we think that, well, I now go and sit with Madame there who is standing next to the secret and also not together with them. And that is where we also immediately we are not offering professional advice to candidates, regardless of political party. So we disassociate them really actually benefit from us. If you see the money, because now it will be like enter a trying position itself, that's why it's you know, so we need to deal with those aspects as well. These are really we need to provide professional advice as people that are in the space, but also we need open supported candidates without fear of being labeled parties. What is important is the aspiration that you want to fulfill as far as your women's participation, disabilities, as well as vote buying. Of course, you can't buy votes without money, but you can buy with so many things. In 2019, there was a report on voting patterns and commission inquiry report. It showed that people were viewing votes was 1.2.5% in that report. In the Malawi and Commemoration, we could imagine the move that and others didn't want. You know, so like your friends you know that kind of thing. So we really need to a lot in terms of dealing with this issue. And I think we still have an opportunity to really go out there and provide much needed awareness on the dangers of vote buying, how they can affect between poverty and things around development. Because they are spending 4 years, they are putting much as well. And the election will be interesting. So let's think about
Thank you very much. Maybe just to bring this panel discussion to an end, I'll just ask you each to just like, if there's anything that you want us to walk away with after this conversation, after this discussion that we've had, this is very enriching. What is the one thing that you want us to walk away with in just a minute, each one of you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the fact that if we take away, if we regulate political parties, so many issues, discrimination against the marginalized groups and the women, persons with disabilities, playing around, then we even be able to elect leaders from merit, because then we judge what from their campaign. Right now, as long as somebody has space, somebody has money, it's really making areas where people get money and vote for somebody else. People in new areas, they become voters. They will start things like women as civil society. With that goes in to do a sensitization on vote buying and corruption and so on. The people in new areas say things like, we cannot trade a person, even if it's a 20 whatever, it's small. And see, this money I must deliver. So they become religious. They also think so it's something like thank you.
I think what I'd like to say is that even with the obstacles that we have at the moment, such as financing, I would still encourage women to look at other strategies and other ways we can still participate in these elections. I know it's important when we talk about financing, but there could be other ways to still get in. And then also, I think my conclusion really is Where things are now, we still have a long way to go unless we have affirmative action that is implemented in law. That is what we need to improve these numbers in the short term.
Thank you.
But let me agree with the question I asked. If more money than what, so let's think about moving money from politics and see what else we can do, and then see what happens there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can we give them a hand, please? There has been a very insightful panel discussion. Thank you very much for the
members that asked questions. I hope all of them have been responded to. I think I was following, and I think that that's the job of responding to each one of them. At this point, I will invite you to take your seats, And just now, allow me to recognize the arrival of our guest of honor. We've been joined by the distinguished First Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Mulungushi, MP. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Please, a hand for her to welcome her. She's also here to address us. She is going to give the keynote speech relating to women's participation in politics. At this point, if we may please just stand up and give her a hand as she makes her way to whatever. I'm not sure if there's other ways or other protocols that I forgot to introduce her. If there are, please forgive me. Please do a hand for her, please. This one. Right and left. Green, that's the date section. Okay. They're busy now. I can sit.
Thank you so much, and I'm very excited to be here. Mrs. Priscilla Chikonde Chansa, the chapter president, Transparency International Zambia. Mr. Morris K. Nyambe, the executive director, Transparency International Zambia. The Ministry of Justice representative, representatives from cooperating partners, the political party representative, the anti-corruption representative, the Electoral Commission of Zambia representative, representatives from civil society organizations, distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my distinct honor and privilege to stand before you today as we celebrate Women in Politics Day, a day that not only celebrates the strides made by women in political leadership, but also reminds us of the work that remains in our pursuit for gender equality in governance. I extend my sincere gratitude to Transparency International Zambia for organizing this important event. Your steadfast advocacy for transparency, accountability, and inclusivity demonstrates the importance that your institution attaches to the empowerment of women in Zambia's political landscape, and I can only encourage you to continue with this noble cause. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, International Women's Day is celebrated across the world to pay tribute to the great women of our societies. As you are fully aware, empowering women is very necessary for bringing gender equality. However, most of the conventional people still feel that women should be confined to household chores and should not step out for work, as that's not their place. It is my considered view that this notion should not be allowed to continue. Women have equal potential as long as they are trusted, valued, and given the opportunities to participate in various endeavors, including the political sphere. Ladies and gentlemen, women remain significantly underrepresented in politics, with only 27% of the parliamentarians in single or lower houses worldwide, as indicated by the Women's Leadership and Political Participation Report for 2025. In Zambia, though we have made progress in increasing women's participation in political leadership, with the country boasting of a female Republican vice president and the first female speaker of the National Assembly, the numbers remain far from being equitable. For instance, we only have 25 female parliamentarians out of 167 members in our National Assembly. We must ask ourselves, what barriers continue to stand in the way? What more can we do to ensure that women do not only enter politics, but thrive and lead effectively? Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, despite constitutional provisions and commitments to gender equality, women in politics continue to face numerous challenges. We had some of the challenges that were brought out by the people on the panel, but there are some more, such as cultural and societal norms that discourage female leadership. Number two, limited access to financial and logistical support for political campaigns. Then there's political violence and intimidation. And the last one, discriminatory attitudes that question women's capabilities in governance. So there are a lot of factors. We've seen them, especially during campaigns. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, these barriers cannot be dismantled without collective effort by all stakeholders. The legislative arm of government must enact laws that protect women in politics from violence and discrimination. Political parties must actively promote gender inclusivity, ensuring that women receive equal access to opportunities, resources, and leadership positions. Civil society organizations and the media must challenge harmful stereotypes and amplify the voices of women in politics. Empowering women in politics is not just about achieving gender balance. It is also about strengthening democracy, enhancing governance, and ensuring that all voices are represented in the decision-making process. The future of Zambia's political landscape depends on our collective ability to create an inclusive, supportive environment where women can lead without fear or limitation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the time for action is now. I want to make a special appeal to political parties because of the vital role they play in creating a more inclusive and representative political landscape in Zambia, ensuring that women contribute to shaping the country's future. I urge all political parties to implement policies that promote women's representation through enforcing quotas in party leadership structures, providing financial and mentorship support for female candidates, strengthening women's league within political parties, and creating safer spaces for women to participate in political activities without fear. I also have an example. We talked about the political parties maybe to adopt more women. But what usually happens in some political parties, when they are given a number, for example, it can be a good number to say 30, 50 or half of the women. But what usually happens is that the men will be the one in charge of the adoptions and they will put the women in areas where they are not famous. So it beats the whole purpose. Where there's in their strongholds, you find that there are a lot of women. It's just like, well, we included so many women, but they know very well that those women won't go anywhere because it's not their stronghold. I also call upon young women to take up the mantle of leadership. The future of Zambia's democracy depends on your voices, your ideas, and your unwavering commitment to change. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, transparency and accountability are at the core of good governance. As we advocate for more women in politics, it is important that our political institutions uphold the highest ethical standards. Unfortunately, corruption, political finance practices worsen the disparity between men and women by restricting women's access to funding, excluding them from patronage networks, and increasing the cost of running for office. Organizations such as Transparency International Zambia play an essential role in ensuring that governance structures remain open, inclusive, and accountable. Through these collective efforts, we can create an environment where women feel empowered to lead without fear of discrimination or victimization. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, being a woman myself, I find it encouraging that an increasing number of international standards and instruments also address the role of women in politics, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which undertake to ensure the equal right of men and women to the enjoyment of all civil and political rights. The resolution, that is number 66, 130, adopted by the UN General Assembly on 19th December 2011 on women and political participation that calls on all states to enhance the political participation of women, and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and its General Recommendation number 23, which encourages political parties to adopt and provide financial and other resources to overcome obstacles and ensure that women have an equal opportunity to be nominated as candidates for elections. In conclusion, as we celebrate the International Women's Day that falls tomorrow with the theme for all women and girls, rights, equality, empowerment, let us take time to reflect on the future we want for our women and girls. Indeed, let us all strive for a Zambia where women lead alongside men in equal measures. We want to see a big number of women in parliament, in the coming parliament, as well as the councillors as well. With these few remarks, I thank you so much and have a blessed day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sitaji. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Another hand, please. Very powerful remarks, encouragement, a call to action for young women to take up leadership roles, and just a call to reflection for each one of us about the future that we want for our women and children. I think, if anything, the image of our democracy is a direct reflection of a society that we're building, isn't it? So for that reason, that reflection is very important. And we think about what kind of future we want for our women and children. Thank you very much, Honorable. Yes, you can take the microphones. Okay, at this point, allow me to invite the TIZ chapter president to come and give, I think we've listened to a lot this morning already. And I think all of us are all the more better for having sat in this room this morning, looking at issues of having women more active and involved in politics, how financial transparency, political financial transparency can enhance women's participation. I think the role of legislation in ensuring that the playing field is level for women in politics. We've heard a lot already. Now the chapter president will just come and give us an affirmation statement. The affirmation statement will support legislation on political financing in Zambia. Please join me in welcoming the TIZ chapter president, Priscilla Chikonde Chanza. Priscilla, please.
The Honorable First Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Madam Sangano, the Ministry of Justice representative, the TIZ Executive Director, Mr. Morris Nyabe, TIZ Board and the General Membership and staff, the Anti-Corruption Commission representative, the Electoral Commission of Zambia representative, representatives of our cooperating partners, representatives of political parties, representatives of civil society organization, may I simply say all our invited guests. Good afternoon once again, and thank you for taking time to join us in commemorating this year's International Women's Day through this special event. As was made clear in the panel discussion, addressing gender disparities in political finance is crucial to achieving equitable political representation in our society. It is therefore imperative that the government, political parties, the private sector, and civil society organizations take the following decisive steps to achieving the goal of equitable political representation in Zambia. 1, promote gender equality through enforcing gender-sensitive public funding regulation. Government must ensure the availability of financial incentives that drive meaningful change in women's political participation and equip regulatory bodies with the resources and authority to monitor and enforce gender-responsive political finance reforms. 2, political parties, civil society, and the private sector should promote capacity building for women involved in politics through establishing training programs, mentorship networks, and financial literacy initiatives to empower women in politics. Donors must also be encouraged to prioritize gender equality and support women-led political initiatives and campaigns. Number 3, government must create a conducive environment for promoting clean money in politics. This can be through various interventions, such as performing due diligence and know your donor good practices, criminalization of illicit political financing and vote buying, closing loopholes for anonymous donations, and banning of campaign donations to political parties and candidates from foreign interests, among others. Number 4, related to the above, that is number 3, there should be a level playing